we have Yash Aggarwal. So he is the Microsoft MVP and a super user in Power Automate and PowerS community. So he will be giving us a session on automate legacy systems with Power Automate desktop. So welcome, Yash. So over to you. So you can share your screen and
Perfect. So I'm sharing my screen now. Please let me know when you can see it. Not the right one. There we go.
yeah,
All right.
Yash, we can see your screen.
Okay, cool. So hey everyone, good morning and again welcome to the Odisha Power Platform User Group. I'll be talking about automating legacy systems using Power Automate Desktop, and we'll also take a look at the overview of what or how do we differentiate between a legacy system and by automating that, what references or what context we are talking about. And before that, a quick introduction about myself. So I'm a Microsoft MVP and MCT for business applications, and I'm also a super user on the Power Apps and Power Automate community forums. You can connect with me by scanning this QR code on LinkedIn, and also follow me on Twitter and my blog, and email me from the links on the screen here. So I'll just wait for a second here if anybody wants to scan this QR code. And yeah, let's go ahead. So basically, what is a legacy system and how or what context we're talking about when we want to automate something of this sort? So consider or imagine a system where an employee comes to the office physically and logs into the system using the VNet or the VPN of the company, and then only they can access a particular system, which is a desktop application. This system does not have any API access for any scope of automation or web development. Also, there's an on-prem setup that includes a front-facing application with a setup of a database, which is again on-prem. It could be anything. And then on the top of this, there is somehow an Exchange server sitting, which is doing the communication part through emails, and analytics are again done on-prem only based on that data using Excel and etc. Now, why is this important, or why do we want to automate this? So, first of all, nowadays companies, as Sandeep was also telling in his previous session, that we want every process or every customer to be a part of our process, and that's how we are going to prosper properly. And that's how we also include or introduce transparency in the systems. And then there's also intuitive analytics. So again, the analytics that you can do using Excel on a given data set is a little bit less than what you can do using advanced softwares like Power BI, and basically other additional support that Power BI provides in terms of integration with Power Apps, Power Automate, and also sharing it on Teams, etc. Of course, Excel can do that too, but then you can do it a little bit more easier on Power BI, adding more data sources and relating tables from multiple data sources and etc. And there's also integration capabilities, like let's say if I have my system which is running on multiple databases, like let's say there was a legacy system which was on an on-prem SQL server. Now there is a part of that system which has been redeveloped or reimagined using Power Platform, and it is using Dataverse as a database, and there's a model-driven app sitting on top of it. Now another team has developed something else which is using a SharePoint list. So now we are working on three data sources. One is a SharePoint list, one is a Dataverse table, and then there's also a SQL Server database that we're using. Now, how do we get all of this data together at one place and visualize it more properly? Or let's say the legacy system has customer sensitive data, but my model driven app only has the data of what my customer has purchased, versus my SharePoint list, which has what is the potential buying capability of this particular customer. So I want to collate all of this and then based on that send targeted emails to them. How do we do it? So you could use Power Automate and Canvas apps to actually connect to these multiple data sources at once, get that information in, and then perform all your operations that you want to. And then that links us with Power process automation as well. So again, let's reimagine one more process here. And in the previous times, what was there is, again, an employee logs into the company portal or company site. I'll not term it as site, but this Windows desktop application where they're logging their time every now and then. And even if they're not doing on the desktop application, at least they're doing it in some ERP system or some timesheet based system where all the time gets accumulated and then it is sent over to the manager. Now, when the manager approves it, then it is passed on to the payroll, where the payroll is looking at individual line items that, okay, this person was available in this month for, let's say, 18 days, and then 4 days holiday, he took a leave for 4 days, and then the 8 day weekend was there. Now, how do you convert this information to a payable amount? Like if the leaves were if the leaves were not paid, if the leaves were to be deducted from the leave balance, or was it to be charged against the payment that the employer was paying to the employee? How do we do that? Now, this all information would require to be put into a desktop software. Like if you've heard about Tally, if you have heard about VT, which is another ledger system, that you put all this information in, and then it is sent over to the bank, and then automated payments are processed. And then if somebody wanted to track the payment of where it was, they can just open up this legacy software, put in the data of the employee or the number of basically any unique identifier, and get the transaction details. So how would we do that, or how would we automate it without involvement of a particular proper team who's scanning all these lines of timesheet and then creating new records in this payroll system? We'll take a look at that, how we can do it using Power Automate Desktop, and let's get to it then. So again, this process which we were seeing, where the users are authenticating, there's an on-premise setup and analytics and communication part. This is going to be common in almost any legacy system that you're going to come across. So if you're going to log your time here, irrespective of where that time log is happening, let's say if it is happening on a desktop software, if it's happening on some modern online website which is internal to the company, and the data is, let's say, being stored on SQL, or these days people are now shifting to Power Apps timesheet templates and then directly saving that data to Excel or SharePoint or Dataverse again. No matter what it is, you can get that data from via Power Automate to any other database of your choice. And then not just database, let's say if you wanted to create these entries onto your legacy software where the company is not providing you access to go to the backend database, which is on the on-prem. So there's no API access. There's no way that you can log in and just directly put the table over there. How do we do that? So let's take a quick look at a small video that I have here. So what I have here is a basic SharePoint list where I'm having the details of the employees. So employee, let's say 11A, this is the unique identifier. And then what is the total number of hours they have logged this particular week or month. And then what is the pay per hour. If there is any analysis ledger that I want this expense to be logged to, what is the analysis account that needs to be charged for this particular expense, and then what is the date of transaction. So this could be any, I mean, you can add as much as metadata that you want over here. The date of transaction can be the date when the payment has to go through, or it can be the date when the employee has logged their hours and it was approved by the manager. Now, once it was approved, what you do, and once it is under review, then what's the process of how, what's the next process sitting on the top of this. So this is a view of the SharePoint list that we are seeing. Now, on the top of this is a Power App where the employees are actually logging their time. Now, let's say I have it just as is, and you can keep editing anything. You can hand over this list to your payroll or HR, and they can add new items here, or they can edit any existing ones in case there was any discrepancy. Now, once all the information is filled up over here, we want all this information to go to our desktop software, where we're managing all the company ledgers. And from there, it has to go to the bank for automated payments. Now, if for now, and in this example, we're showing that it is directly being logged on SharePoint, but again, there could be a Power App sitting on the top of this. And once it is saved, we see that it is under review. And then we have this flow over here, which is triggered every time this item is modified and its status is changed to approved. So let's see that. Now, once it is approved, we'll see that this flow triggers off, and it is going to trigger another UI flow. So this UI flow has a pre-recorded set of actions which it is going to perform on a desktop software. So in this window, you'll see that we have this Power Automate Desktop running on our virtual machine. And then it is going to pull up this VT cash book, which is our desktop software to log all these expenses. So let's see that in action now. And this desktop flow is being called from our cloud flow, and we're sending all the input variables here. So it opens up the software, it opens up the respective file, fills in all the details, gets us the unique identifier. I mean, it's gone before it we could actually see it. So that's how fast it is compared to what a manual task would look like. And then it gets the unique identifier of the payment code and sends us back that information, so it can be updated to SharePoint, or it can also be communicated to the user, stating that this is the reference ID that you can use to track your payment or whatever other additional information you wanted to provide. And then as I do this display bank account, I'll be able to see the actual ledger, and then you'll see that employee 11A has pay 00XYZ and then 2, and what is the payment that has been made. So this is how the entire reconciliation process could also happen. Sorry, do we have any question? Okay, I'll
No,
continue.
yes, as of now, we don't have any.
There was disturbance. I thought somebody unmuted probably. Okay, so moving forward with this process. Now let's also imagine another process here. Why RPA is important and how it can help us. So let me quickly stop sharing my screen. All right, so sharing my screen back. So here you can see this UI flow that is happening. Basically, there's a limited trial that you can use for those ledgers. So I just created it a little while ago to record this automation process. But then this is how it's working. So the first step, as you can see, is it is a starting an auto-generated action using the desktop recorder, which is this one. So every time you have your Power Automate desktop tool installed on your machines, and then depending upon the kind of automation, let's say if it is you want to mimic a user action and you'll have to do it for multiple row items, so you can just click this desktop recorder for a desktop application, and if it was on web, you can use the web recorder option. And then you'll see that we're first clicking this UI element, which is I've identified my file on the desktop to for this action to double click on, and then once it processes, we have this transaction action. So we'll be able to see a screenshot of how it looks like, or probably not in this case. Okay, not in this case because it has removed all the screenshots when I copied over the flow. So when it clicks on the transaction, I'll open up the video again so it's more clear. Okay. All right. So as it is running in a few seconds, yeah. So you'll see that on the desktop, I have this Fragile Dev cachebook file where I'm storing all the information of the ledgers that are being created. And that is what it is going to click in the first step. So double click that and open up that file. And then we have an identifier that we've placed on a block where it clicks on the transaction and starts logging that actually. So we'll see that in a second over here on the video. So you'll see that it clicked transaction and then it clicked add a new payment receipt here. So that is what it does over here. And then basically in when you're working with desktop software, it is not necessarily important that the automation software or the recorder identifies each individual block as it should. So that's why we'll have to use these actions like focus text field and then start populating the data, because at the moment you click it, the desktop recorder is going to consider it as an action performed. So it is going to note that as an action actually. And when you start typing, then it is first going to click and then start typing. And then when you click into the other one, it may not be necessary that next time when you're running this, it identifies it as it should. So that is why it is very important to note down your identifiers when you're trying to automate a system like this. And also screen resolution is of big importance and as a big parameter over here. Open the software in full screen view so that when it is positioning that element to find it the next time when it is going to run, it is easier for the automation process to find it. And then you'll see that we can also use send keys actions. So I was in this part, let's say in the pay option where we have this T and pay in red, that is basically a number that I have to provide. So we've defaulted it to 1 because we are actually, this is an outgoing payment. And then after that, it straight away skips to date. Now, you without pressing enter, it is skipping to date, but then when you enter the date, it is not directly going to the paid to receive from. You have to perform an action to go to the next field. And some of the desktop software support the tab indexes, but some of them do not. So wherever it is supported, you can say, use the send keys action, and then you have the syntax, which is, let's say I want to first press shift and then I want to press tab into this active window, for which the reference is coming from the previous actions. Now once you do that, So basically shift tab is going to a previous one, like the previous field. So once I fill the date, I want to copy over this number, which is auto generated. This number needs to be saved to SharePoint because I want to send it over for reconciliations. And then after shift tab is completed, now I want to go to the date part. So I'm using the send keys action again, which is tab, and then deleting whatever was there in the date, again populating this date part in the 11th action here. And as I scroll down, okay, in the 12th one, you'll see that once I have identified that it is a date window, I'm passing on the variable which is transaction date. And then again send a tab, then you keep filling up the data where I want to put the transaction to and from. Now the next thing is, like, once I put something over here and once I put the total, it sometimes automatically selects the analysis ledger. Now let's see that. I have provided this detail and pay to receive from, and the moment I hit the tab and after putting the amount, it has an analysis ledger auto selected because it's a drop down. This is the feature, or this is the functionality of the desktop software. So how do I actually remove that and select a new value from there? Because if I'm going to select a new value directly, it is not going to accept it on the automation sense. So you're first deleting, which is something that is already there, and then adding the analysis ledger over here by selecting the option value. So this one actually allows us to search something. So the moment you input something which is exactly same as this. So if I have capital E expenses, if I'm going to put that exactly over here, it is going to select it directly. And the same goes for the analysis account also. Okay, go back 10 seconds, 10 more seconds. Yeah. And then once all this information is filled, what happens is if you're at the analysis account and you hit an enter key or a tab key, it starts adding the second line. But you don't want to do that because you want to process individual lines. Now, if your process was in a way that a manager is approving this sheet for 100 people at one time, you want to grab that Excel sheet and then process individual rows. At that point of time, you can have the step, step two onwards, sorry, step 3 onwards, not even step 3. Basically, you in the step 3 we are entering the transaction window. Step 4 onwards, or the step 5 onwards, basically when we are clicking into the box and providing a transaction type over here, which is pay to the user. At this point of time, you can modularize this step from 4 until the step where we are providing the analysis account until step 23, and then put that into a loop for each individual row item on your Excel sheet. And then that is how you parameterize these values, and analysis account, analysis ledger, entry values, these all go separately for each item. And then finally you uh, press save and close this. And to get the data, or to get these 0007, which is a unique identifier, we'll have to create another array that can be added directly from the actions over here. So you can see that we have variables. I can search for a list here, create a plain list, or you can see here I can add this item, which is create a new list at the top action, where I'm going to save all my details. So it's going to produce this variable as a list, and this is where I want to note down all the information. So if I have a loop now, um, I'll put a for each loop here, and let's for now take our list value here and save. So let's assume that our list here is rename this. And in this list, we are actually putting our Excel sheet. It's a populated list. Let's assume that. So Excel rows and save. And then we can easily drag. Yeah, because it is not existing. So we are going to have to rename this also. Then for each Excel row, we are going to select, okay, transaction goes up. This one also goes up. Focus field comes here. And similarly, populate text field. These all items start coming here itself. And then you'll see that instead of passing the variable as transaction type, we can just directly refer to the Excel cell values. So our Excel has all these variables already created, like the analysis account, ledger, etc., etc. Then you can point to the row, which is the iteration item. So if we are talking in developer terms, this is a for loop where for I is equal to 0, I less than the length of the items, and I plus plus, and we pass the iteration indexes that way. So I dot analysis account goes into the analysis variable that way. So let's move all this into the for loop and just have a visualization of how it would look like. And of course, you can also create subflows that can be called into the main process. So the one that I'm showing to you is a very rough technique of doing this, but you can create a subflow and then you can call it in our main flow. As you can see, we have a subflow over here. In the main flow, you can just directly reference it out and move it back here. Okay. Save is also going to come down because we are directly going to hit enter and then add the new values. Now I'm going to add another list action here, which is create a new list, and let's name it as output rows, which is going to contain all the 007 the unique identifiers that we had. And when we have this information here, which is um, where we were doing the double shift tab and getting the details and own text here. So I'm going to add another item, which is add item to list here, and the value is going to be from the previous item. So that is okay. Let's just close this for now. Come back to the bottom. That is the entry value, and we must have an action here which sets the entry value to the item that we're getting from here. So it attribute value is what we have to put in the item to list. So I move this back here and then add item, which is going to be attribute this one. And the list is our output rows. Now this is going to just create an array like structure for me where it is going to input all the unique identifiers for each item. Now we are just getting the unique identifiers. That is the we don't know where it has to actually go and update because we are performing this on a batch Excel kind of a scenario. So what we'll also have to do is from our input data that we have here, which is the analysis account, blah, 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 we are going to have to add another input variable, which is going to be a unique identifier to the row where this data needs to be updated later on. So once that is there, we'll have two items, two identifiers in the list. One is the identifier of the row where this unique identifier needs to be updated. And then that is how the batch process happens for the Excel file. And we'll minimize this and you can see this is here. Now let's say if I wanted to just directly add it as an email and send it over, we can do that also. So I can have it as an Outlook email where we provide this send email message through create and send an email through Outlook. So there's a bunch of other possibilities that can happen here. And this is basically a process which does not require any human intervention. So you set up this process, and if you want to run it as an unattended process, we'll have to go through that licensing model where you get an unattended license for RPA, and you have your Cloudflow that keeps invoking this based upon the desired trigger, and the automation runs on without any human intervention. And you can also catch any errors that are happening over here, send it over to the Cloudflow, or just send a notification email stating that this was an error that happened at this point. So a person actually needs to see this. Now, if we wanted this to be an attended process where, let's say, while processing individual rows, we first want that a person who's sitting on desktop, they should enter or they should verify the actual amount value and only then process the transaction forward. So how would we do, how would we achieve that kind of a situation? So let's see that also. What I'll do is I'll start with adding an action, which is, let's do a simple one, which is show a message box. This one. and I'll create it over here itself. The display message box is verify the information for user, and the message to display is going to be, let's say I'll put a name, and from our variables I can directly pass on the name of the person. So transaction to from is the name of the person, and let's say the amount is there, so that is going to be transaction amount, and I'll say what is the transaction type, and that's going to be from here, and no button, okay, save. Now if I add another, anyways it's going to fail here because it's not going to find that, so let's save this. And while this is saving, there's also one recent update that has been received. I'm using this Windows system which has a Windows 10 Home. So this process was migrated onto this laptop a little later, because earlier Power Automate Desktop was supported only on Windows 10 Pro machines. That is why I was running it on a virtual machine initially. Now if I run this, it's first going to show me a message box like this. So first you verify the information for a user. So name is provided, the amount is provided, transaction type. You can add any more variables you want to add over here, perform any further computation as needed. If there was any file item that you want to associate over here, you can do that also. Only after pressing OK, it is going to go to the next step. But since it's not going to find it, it is directly going to fail because we don't have that file here. And you'll get that, okay, the element was not found. Of course, it was bound to fail that way. So that is one item here. And then quickly moving on to another type of automation that we can achieve. So this kind of an automation is also involving some level of UI, where a person would sit down and keep logging into the expense ledger, and then we are feeding this process a recording of that. Now let's say if you don't have that, if you just have a normal process that requires some high computation or some advanced level functions that are offered by Power Automate Desktop. So how would you do that? And for that, I have a use case, which is let's consider an insurance company here, where the claim agents are filing their insurance claims from the getting information from the person, and then this information is stored on Dataverse. Now, related to this claim, there is another SharePoint document structure that gets created, which has all the files or all the necessary documentation related to a claim request. Now, to process that claim request, there is a person who's manually getting all those documents, converting those to PDFs, and then collating all those PDFs into one merged file, and then sending it across to the approving officer to for their consideration to review the documents and then finally approve. Now, to remove this manual intervention and to save much time over here, what we can do is we have a SharePoint document library already containing those files. So a flow gets triggered every time there is a metadata update over there, and then it gets all the files from SharePoint, creates it using the file system connector on our desktop using Power Automate, and then after it is created over there, we trigger a desktop flow. The desktop flow in return picks up those files from there and then creates a merge file. So let's see all of this in action now. Again, as you can see here, we have, all right, not this one. Okay, I'll have to probably pick it up from here directly, which is the collate PDF. So we have our cloud flow structure here that triggers every time a file is modified in my SharePoint, and I just want it to trigger if it's a folder, or I just want to proceed further with the next actions if the detected trigger or the file on which this flow has triggered is of type folder, because we want to get the folder items and then collate them into a single PDF. And then we are initializing a variable to get the file path that is going to be fed to our Power Automate desktop. So in the documents, in the condition, we are checking that if it is a folder, if the folder type is true, and then we have a custom attribute which is send for approval is equal to yes, only then move to the next actions, or else just close this flow. And as next actions, we are getting the folder metadata, listing the folder, getting all the content from this folder, and then using this file system connector on our desktop, we are creating these files and then appending all the file paths into the array variable that will be sent over to our automation on the Power Automate desktop. So if it comes further down, and then finally getting the file content of the merged file and then creating a new file in SharePoint. So you'll see that we'll just create a new folder structure here manually, of course, and then name it as an approval. So for the demo's sake, it's just being done manually, but then while creating a claim form itself, you can have all the documents passed over here using the Power App configuration that you'll set up. And we'll just directly upload a few PDF files here. The moment PDF files are updated. So again, an important thing to note over here is we are not going to change the attribute value on inside of the folder because we want the structure to be carried on. So we want everything within this particular folder to be sent to the desktop flow. So we are just going to send for approval as yes, and this is going to trigger off our cloud flow. Once it triggers our cloud flow, it is creating those files on the desktop using the file system connector. And let's just see the process for how that happens. So this is our desktop flow for merging the PDF files. It's probably not allowing me to open it here. All right, there you go. So what we're doing is we are getting all the PDF file paths over here, and then we are finding those PDF files and merging them into one. After the merge is happening, we get a variable produced which is merge PDF. This is again the file path. Then we are just setting the merge file to merge PDF and sending it over back. So I'll go back to our demo here. And using the file system connector, it's like we are detecting that, okay, the file has been created using the merge PDF form, and we provide a specific file format or the naming convention that this should only be the name, and that name is passed on to our file system action connector where we're getting the content later on. So you'll see that pretty much it doesn't show the run because there's nothing on the UI that is going on. It's all doing on the back end where Power Automate Desktop has its own script, which is in the module itself that is getting these PDF documents and collating it together. So it should take a few more seconds to show up. And once I come back here to the approval documents, which is another document library that I have, we'll see the merged approval document here. And it is going to have all the three documents collated in one place as a single merged document. There's no separation over here. And this happens pretty fast. You don't have to manually download any files anywhere. It just picks up directly everything from SharePoint and finishes the merge and saves it over here. So that was pretty much it about the merging of documents. You can explore individual actions which are available in Power Automate Desktop. There are pretty powerful actions that we can do. And of course, whatever shortcomings we have in Cloud Flows, like we cannot execute scripts, we can do that using Power Automate Desktop. So if at all the licensing permits, and if you have those, if you have the use case that needs such kind of an implementation, you can pass parameters from the Cloud Flow to your desktop flow, run the script, perform any manipulation or calculation or any other functionality that needs to be done, and then get back any data you want in the cloud flow. And with that, so again, no matter where you are at, if you want to start with Power Automate Desktop, recently, as I've said, that earlier it was only for Windows 10 Pro. Now it's also for Windows 10 Home, so that you can learn automation and you can also check on what individual processes that you can automate. And that does not require any premium licenses. You can directly download Power Automate Desktop, and you'll see this something like this. So I don't have a proper license for Power Automate Desktop so that I can actually call it from a actually I have one. So when you don't have the license, you'll see here if you want to go premium, and then go premium is the way when you can actually use the data connector, which is the on-prem data gateway, to connect from your cloud flow to your desktop flow and then invoke it. Or else, if it is just for personal automation, you can directly create your desktop flow on using the Power Automate Desktop tool, and you'll have to actually manually run it, or you can configure it based upon the use case that you're working on. And to start with, there is also RPA in a day modules that you can follow for Power Automate Desktop. You'll see different use cases over there. And if you're stuck with something, definitely you can go to the Power Users forums and post questions over there. With that, I think I'm done and open the floor for questions and answers.
Thank you, Yash, for this session. So we have few questions. I'll
Yep.
just. So the first question is from Karan. He's asking, can we share a Power Automate desktop flow in either a solution or via export method?
Yes. So that is how I actually did in my tenant or environment also. Basically, you cannot directly share it on the Cloudflow's UI. What you have to do is you have to create a solution and then add a desktop flow over there, and you can share it with others. But when you're sharing desktop flows, you'll have to note, or you'll have to make sure that when you're using this UI automation, you better test it on the target environment also, because there might be some changes and some of the actions might need some retuning.
Okay. So hope Karan, you got your answer. So moving to the
Yes,
next
absolutely.
question. So moving to the next question, this is from Rishi, asking, similar to merge, is there split action available as well?
There should be one. I believe there is one. Let me just quickly check that out for you. And even if it is not there, we can use PowerShell scripts or any other script to do it. So split PDF is not there. Merge PDF is there.
Okay. So the next question is from Pallavi. She is asking, can this alone achieved with only Power Automate that is not using desktop? I mean Power Automate desktop.
Sorry, I'll check the question again. Can you repeat that, please?
Can this be alone achieved with only Power Automate? I think she's asking, can this be achieved using the Cloud Automate?
Which one?
Pallavi, you can just unmute and clarify the question.
Okay, I think.
She's asking like, can this the
So basically, we did two items here. The first one was the UI automation that is not achievable only using Power Automate Cloud Flows. The merge PDF, it is achievable with Cloud Flows, but you'll have to use third-party connectors like there's Encodian, there's Plum Sale, and all that. Some of the most of times clients do not want to use third-party connectors because of GDPR issues and all that. And if they want the data to be maintained on their servers only, Cloud flows that trigger a desktop flow to get the file and convert it, or perform any other action on that is feasible.
Okay. So hope Pallavi, you got your answer. There is no more questions. Yes.
Okay.
So
All right. So if anybody has any questions later on, also please feel free to reach out on Twitter, LinkedIn, or email, and I'll be happy to assist you.
yeah, sure. Yes. Thanks for the session. Okay, we have got one more question.
Yes.
Yes. How
How
do
do
we
we?
optimize the cloud flows performance?
This is a very open-ended question. It has a lot of variables that need to be considered. Like, what is optimization? For example, if you're using Power Automate as an RTL tool where you're using it just to update bulk data, then it's not the best way of using cloud flows. If you have any specific scenario, then I'll be able to better answer this one. And this is for Dilip.
Yeah. So anyone having any other questions? Okay, Dilip is asking.
Using nested loops. So again, nested loops is unless absolutely required, which I won't use that. And I'll say as standard practices, we've seen that switching from variables to compose actions saves more time. And then if at all you're having multiple variable actions, but then when you're using loops, it is important to use variables. You cannot just use compose because you'll have to keep refreshing those. So again, it's on the process of how you have structured it, and if you can avoid the loops wherever possible. And again, if there is a lot of data manipulation required, there have been some other innovative solutions as well, where people are using Excel scripts to perform that manipulation. So you just put your data in Excel, and then you run an Office script over there, you get the data back in flow. I can share that link also later on.
I think I think we are good now. Yes, I
Right.
think there are no more questions.
Okay, then cool. Thank you so much again, Shashi, for having me here. It was great
Yeah.
presenting.
Yes, same here. Yes, thanks for the session. So let's move on now to our next session. Let me just share my screen.